of Osoyoos Town Council, Tuesday, July the 4th, 2017 at 2 p.m. in Council Chambers. So we will call the meeting to order, and first up will be the adoption of some minutes. The Committee of the Whole minutes from June 19th, the regular open minutes of June 19th, and the annual general meeting minutes of June 19th, 2017. Could we have them, pardon me? Could we have them adopted together, all together? Yes. Are you? Yes. Thank you. Councillor Youngberg, Councillor Rhodes. All in favor? Thank you. Business arising from prior minutes? Doesn't look like there's anything. Introduction of late items? No. So could we have the agenda for today be adopted, please? Councillor King, Councillor Campol. All in favor? No delegations, no water matters. No correspondence. We're whipping right along. First up then is the bylaws and a report on the foreshore and lake regulation, and that would be Director Cunningham.
Thank you. Rather lengthy report. I'm sorry. First of all, background attached for council consideration are the following 4 bylaw amendments to further improve our foreshore and lake regulation purposes. First, amendment to foreshore and lake zoning bylaw for housekeeping improvements. Second, amendment to official community plan to incorporate a foreshore and lake development permit area, FLDPA. Amendment to land use procedures, LUP bylaw, to implement the permit. And fourth, amendment to the municipal ticketing information system, also to implement the permit system. Only the first 2 bylaw amendments have to go to a public hearing, but we will include the latter 2 in the public information package. After the public hearing, staff will bring all bylaws forward for council to consider third reading and final adoption. Now proceeding with the overview of the foreshore and lake zoning bylaw. After 5 years of experience with our foreshore and lake zoning bylaw, it is timely to make some housekeeping improvements. Council approved our bylaw in 2012 following public stakeholder recommendations the previous year from our Lake Recreational Commercial LRCU Task Force. Bylaw objectives include sustaining Osoyoos Lake for the health of local fisheries, safe and orderly recreational commercial use, and the continued attractiveness of Osoyoos as a resort community. This type of bylaw is becoming more popular with BC local governments, with Okanagan examples including the Columbia Shuswap Regional District, CSRD, who are leader in the field, and to varying degrees, Lake Country, Kelowna, West Kelowna, and Summerland. Pardon me. Our bylaw applies from the upland high water mark across the foreshore and out to our municipal lake boundary in Osoyoos Lake, which is typically about 100 meters from shore. 4 zones are demarcated. W1 public water use, including protected swimming areas. W2 private moorage, typically for single-family homes. W3 group strata moorage, and W4 commercial moorage. Each zone has its own development standards, and a zoning amendment and public hearing is required to accommodate different uses not permitted under current zoning. The Director will now take Council through the various housekeeping improvements in the attached bylaw amendment, which collectively brings us into conformity with provincial regulations, rounds out regulatory requirements, and add clarity to some text. So looking at the actual bylaw itself, starting with Section 1 definitions, we've changed the definition of, or expanded the definition of foreshore to say it means the Crown land and all other lands between the high and low water levels of Osoyoos Lake. This change was necessitated by our experience with the Paradise Park, where it was properly drawn to our attention that in fact they weren't Crown lands, and this apparently, according to a legal opinion, is a very rare circumstance with respect to Okanagan lakes, but so we've felt it was desirable to fill that particular loophole. Private moorage, we've included a definition of that because that's cross-referenced under the permit guidelines. Administration and enforcement, general compliance, all works within a lake must be take place in accordance with the Water Sustainability Act, Section 11, notification of approval. So it doesn't matter what kind of application it is, including the ones that have gone to the province or may be coming to us. If in fact there's works in a lake, then at some point or other there must be a requirement met for this notification of approval. We've also put another cross-reference into the permit regulations by saying all work on private mergers is subject to an approved foreshore and lake development permit. Under general regulations, no fences are permitted within the foreshore, within the Osoyoos Lake. That's something new to our bylaw. It was brought to my attention that people were doing that in other lakes, not in this one to my knowledge, but with the considerable damage that occurred in Okanagan Lake, it was over 1,200 to 1,500 ducks were destroyed. But it was also drawn to the attention of regulatory authorities that a lot of fences had been put up without permission. Of course, this is extremely damaging to fish flow. So just being preemptive here, I don't want anybody to think that's good practice in the Osoyoos Lake, so we'd add it to our bylaw. Pedestrian access, and here's something else which has been highlighted at Okanagan Lake. There's groups there have become very active since the docks and so forth have been damaged there, and they're trying to regain the foreshore for pedestrian access. And I thought it was fit to expand what we say in our bylaw. Instead of saying shall not impede pedestrian access, I put some words which generally follow what comes from provincial best practice, and says maintain reasonable pedestrian access along the foreshore by either providing sufficiently level ground access around the facility or access walkways that are low enough to step onto and off, or stairs on and off the walkways. Turning to W2, the private moorage zone. We are talking about private moorage, so private moorage buoys are more appropriate than talking about public moorage buoys. The moorage regulations, we're bringing ourselves into consistency with provincial regulations, where the walkway surfaces must not be more than 1.5 meters wide. We previously had them at or currently have them at 1.8. Then going down to group stratage, moorage, there was a shortfall in our bylaw which has just come to our attention. We've got an application potentially for a dock for a hotel, and so we've added that they can have docks equivalent to 1 out of 2 each of the units that they have, which is equivalent to the strata arrangements which we have. And the similar dock with provision had to be added to that zone as well. So any questions about the changes to the bylaw itself? If not, I will proceed.
Mr. Cunningham, are they consistent with other areas, or is there anybody else that has this type of regulation in place?
Yeah. The Columbia-Shuswap Regional District would be the one which is closest to us. They have a more complicated situation than we have, because they have actually their regional district, and they have 3 OCPs that have provisions for these kinds of things. And they have a lot more zones. They have about a dozen zones to cover all the varied situations that they encounter. But yes, their regulations are the same. Okay, turning to
question over here.
Excuse me, Councillor Youngberg had a question.
Director Cunningham, do you get the applications that are filed with the federal government? Do they direct them to you at this point in time, or
we get the specific ones? Yes, we get referrals just to check that in fact what they're approving is consistent with our own bylaws. And they've been, I would say, pretty diligent in that regard. Mm-hmm. In the long term, we'd like to get a formal protocol that was recommended by the Lake Recreational Commercial Task Force, to have something in writing, so that we're not so dependent on the goodwill of the staff that happen to work there at the present moment. But right now, they are referring them to us. Mm-hmm. But that's just for specific permissions, general or something else, and I'll just talk about that right now.
Oh, okay. Yeah, okay.
Foreshore and Lake Development Permit Area, FDPA, It is proposed to add a foreshore and lake development permit area into our OCP to promote environmentally sensitive design of private moorage facilities and to complement our foreshore and lake zoning bylaw. As explained below, these new permits will also compensate for a diminishing provincial regulatory role for private moorages. The Ministry of Forest, Lands and Natural Resources Operations, MFLNO, has very different approaches for dealing with what it distinguishes as specific permission and general permission application for moorage facilities. The Ministry directly reviews all specific permission applications for larger moorages such as group strata and commercial facilities, and also refers them to local governments for checking against their particular requirements. Control of private moorages is another matter, however. In most cases, the Ministry automatically grants... Never let me close to anything which is remotely mechanical. Okay.
That's good to know.
Including your car. Okay. So I said that they distinguish between two different types of applications. The Ministry directly reviews all specific permission applications for larger moorages such as group, strata, and commercial facilities, and also refers them to local governments for checking against their particular requirements. Control of private moorages is another matter, however. Okay. In those cases, the Ministry automatically grants a general permission if property owners conform to basic blanket conditions, usually on their own self-cognizance. This means that the province, and by extension local governments, are often unaware of what private moorages are being built. In the view of many affected local governments, this regulatory shortfall is worsened with the Ministry's announcement on January 17, 2017 that general permission exclusions were being broadened with only a few area exceptions. To enable a shift, the Ministry removed their previous service limit of 24 square meters for private docks, which is the same as in our bylaw. As reported by the Columbia Shuswap Regional District, CSRD, this change could now effectively exempt docks up to 120 square meters in size from review. So a huge multifold change of exceptions that might occur, depending upon the individual design parameters involved. Staff recommends that we emulate the long-established CSRD practice of requiring development permits for private moorages by instituting our own similar foreshore and lake development permit area, FLDPA. The guidelines in our attached FLDPA are modeled after those applied by the CSRD, which in turn originate from provincial best practices. Like the CSRD, we do not advocate duplicating the province's mandate for specific permissions of larger moor facilities. Okay, turning to the land use procedures bylaw amendment. Two small amendments were required to our land use procedures LUP bylaw to assist implementing foreshore and lake development permits. These are to include them under the Director of Planning Development Service delegate authority for Council for approving development permits, and to add them into the development permit application form. It is also noted that minor development permit fees of $750 would apply under LUP bylaw Schedule B as long as construction value does not exceed $1 million. Unless Council wanted something different, and I would like to have some discussion on that item. Barry and I myself talked about the report afterwards, and we were concerned that a permit fee of $750 would be too onerous and might deter some people from coming forward and applying for a permit. So the kind of discussion which we had was in the area of 200 to 250. So I'd like to have Council's feedback on that. And then lastly, municipal ticketing information system bylaw. Lastly, amendments would also be required to municipal ticketing information bylaw to add offenses and fines for commencing work without development permit. Options. Option 1, Council give initial bylaw amendment readings. Option 2, before proceeding to a public hearing, Council authorizes staff to send referrals for input on its proposed new foreshore and lake development permit area to the Ministry of Forest Lands and Natural Resource Operations and also to the Columbia-Shuswap Regional District and to major Okanagan dock builders, some who are actually very, very conversant on these matters. Option 2, should be option 3, pardon me. Council immediately requires more information before proceeding. Impacts: community, consistent, clear, and effective regulations will contribute to achieving community foreshore and lake objectives and will create a level playing field for all users. Organizational, additional demands on P&D staff for new development permits are unlimited at this time, but should be manageable. Budget development permit fees will assist to defray the costs of additional town services. Significant dates, timely actions needed to cover off a regulatory shortfall for private mergers. And sustainability, long-term environmental sustainability of Osoyoos Lake is a primary concern of our community sustainability plan. So staff recommends a combination of options 1 and 2, and then starting with asking for first and second readings to the following 2 attached bylaws. So the Foreshore and Lake zoning amendment bylaw, and then the house, that's the housekeeping improvements, and then the amendment to the official community plan to incorporate the new development permits. So I'll just stop at that point.
Thank you very much. It's a bit complicated. Now, my assumption is that when we do the motions that we have to do each one individually.
That's correct.
Yeah. So the first thing that I noticed was the $750, which I thought probably was a little bit high, and I didn't know where that came from. So I'm glad that you mentioned it.
Right.
Could we go ahead, Councillor Rhodes?
Thank you, Mayor McCorduff. So I have a bunch of questions, but I'll try and summarize them in one small area. I object to the $750 as well. I think $250 would be a much more palatable thing for the obvious reason that people may try to get around things because of the cost. The Waterfront Steering Committee is working through building a large public pier into the water. And as we've learned, there's tons and hours of time being spent on riparian areas and being sensitive to every blade of grass and every tree and every grain of sand, up to and including how sunlight shines through the portion of the pier that you walk on and how it affects the fish habitats in the water and that kind of thing. Am I right in assuming that if you build a private dock that's anchored in exactly the same way, but it would be smaller, of course, because it would be for private use, that there are no conditions that would stop somebody from, harming the environment or riparian areas or fish habitats or anything like that?
Well, at the present moment, yeah, it's very thin. It's largely left up to the individual to say that, in fact, they're meeting all their requirements. In some cases, the individuals will contact the ministry to ensure that they're on the right track, but that's not an absolute requirement. So some things undoubtedly are slipping between the cracks. So
yeah,
the answer is yes.
Yeah, that statement that you had in there about, well, they just sort of say okay, troubles me an awful lot. Should we be looking at that as, some kind of an impact? I mean, I don't even know the details, but I do know with our pier development at Jarley Beach, I'm intimately knowledgeable about what we have to do there. And I always thought it was a pretty good thing because, you can harm a lot of stuff in the lake and that, private lands leading up to the water and that type of thing. And boy, just to give an open door to driving pilings in somewhere and...
Yeah, well, to answer your question in 2 ways, I mean, one of my main purposes being here today is to make sure that where I see a regulatory shortfall for private docks is met and is met quickly so that they're put on a level playing field with all the other works that are occurring in the water, and that's not the case right now. There's no question about that. With respect to our pier, I think the public should be assured that we're following our own rules and guidelines. So, for instance, the pathway that comes up to it and will ultimately connect to it from Jarrow Park, it was deliberately stopped 30 meters from the shoreline of the lake, because that's the assessment area for riparian impacts. So those impacts will be looked at by our consultants, and then when we get into the actual design of the pier itself, we'll make sure that in fact we meet all the necessary environmental regulatory approvals, and that it's of good sound design. You mentioned, for instance, the fact that there may be some specifications from the regulatory agencies at the provincial level that there has to be sufficient light infiltration that will go through and not harm fish habitat below. We've also been concerned in discussions with the consultants about the number of actual piers that they would install in the lake, and if we have too many of them, it's going to inhibit fish flow. So we said we prefer not to take that route. Keep as many piles, I should say. Keep as many piles to the minimum as possible. So we're being very mindful of doing, the walk the same as we talk.
If I could.
Yeah, go ahead.
So my concern is that there doesn't appear to be any method or anything in either the provincial or federal, and certainly not in the local bylaws or rules or regulations that would prevent somebody from just going and doing what they want. And I'm wondering if there might be a condensed version so that we can at least do a little bit, to make sure that things are done the right way and that kind of thing. I know we will with the construction of it, but everything else just seems to be
just in case of exceptions, there are some limited exceptions, which I do want to point out that they do not impact us at all or affect us. But in some areas, the province has its own environmental sensitive areas, and also two cases where First Nations have active interest, then they will call for restrictions. But otherwise, it's open season for private moorage operators. So, in addition to having the regulations that deal with this, we'll have to go in an educational process and make it, clear why we're doing it, what's involved, who has to come for a permit. And I think we need a lot of time put into that so that it just doesn't impact somebody suddenly. Obviously, there's no building going on during the winter months, so I think we should have our messaging clearly identified and cleared up before we go into the spring season, so that everybody's aware of what we're trying to do.
So, Mr. Cunningham, the people who are not outside the town boundaries have a different set of rules, or they appear to. And I know that this year, because of the ice on the lake and the winter storms, that many people who had docks and out there suffered great losses because they either didn't bring them in, like people probably would do if they lived here year-round, and they would see that was necessary. I understand that that people wanting to put out docks have been inquiring about insurance on them, and that seems to be a concern as well. Has this come up particularly this year because of the rough winter and the number of docks that I assume were totally ruined? Certainly some that I saw.
Well, as I mentioned, in Okanagan Lake, it's a huge impact, 1,200 to 1,500 affected moorages, so it's certainly drawn a lot of attention from the regulatory authorities, both at the local level and provincial level. So I think there's just going to be incredible pressure in terms of permitting to proceed. I think that some people are going to find out that, what was a dock that they thought was grandfathered in some way, in fact was illegal, and has to be made legal now. They're going to have to design it properly. So I think there's going to be significant changes. The actual impacts in the Osoyoos Lake, I think, are far less. I don't think we suffered the same amount of damage.
No, but many did, so, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so could we, does anybody else have any, oh, pardon me? I'm sorry.
A couple things. First off, for council, they would have to deal with the OCP bylaw first, and then the foreshore secondly. The second question is, Alan, you were talking about a $750 fee. What bylaw does that relate to? Because I can't find any of that number in here.
That would be municipal ticketing.
Municipal ticketing.
Okay, so I just pointed out that currently under that particular bylaw, you would be included under a small development permit, which has got a limit of $750, because we're not expecting there to be any value over $1 million. And with respect to your very good point about which bylaw to read first, in this particular case, it would not matter because the OCP changes are not enabling the other ones. Normally, if you're dealing with a rezoning, you do it that order.
Awesome, thank you.
Thank you very much.
So how do we deal with that amount? Because we don't want to go through.
Well, I think it was put on the floor at $250. That was my suggestion to the CEO, so I'd certainly go along with that. So when we get to that particular bylaw, an MPI bylaw, I would suggest that you give it first and second reading subject to the permit fee being set at $250.
Councillor King, did you have?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. I just had one more question about the dock. I see here you kind of point to the size of it. Is there anything in the bylaw that says what type of material they have to use?
That is something that's missing in our current bylaws and something which has been picked up by the permit. If you read the permit conditions, a lot of them deal directly with the types of materials that can be put into a dock, and they have to be environmentally acceptable and sensitive, and they have to be installed in an environmentally acceptable way as well. Some of them, for instance, you have to do the work on shore before you put it onto the dock.
And
So that's a shortfall we're meeting with these smaller docks right now. In terms of the larger ones, I trust that the province is looking after those kinds of considerations.
So if we're asking for them to pay a cost, then would we be going down to monitor what they're doing, like a normal building permit?
It won't be a building permit. It'll be a development permit, which we already have for buildings. We have them for commercial buildings, industrial, and multifamily buildings. So they're somewhat equivalent to that.
Okay.
I understand the development permit, but does someone from town go follow up to make sure they're proceeding with what they've signed off on?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
They'll have to be the follow-up.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, so did you want to speak first? Okay, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Coroff. So I'm not sure if I'm clear on how we're going to handle this environmental impact thing. Is that done through the permit process?
Just through the permit process, okay? So it's very clear what you can do and can't do from an environmental point of view.
Okay. I'm quite concerned because if you're building a new home on the lakefront, one of the first things that you have to do is the riparian assessment to make sure that your construction doesn't impact anything. And I see this being, somewhat of a condensed version of that, where, dock construction could impact those areas out there. And so we don't do it in the bylaw, it's done in the permit, and I just wanted to clarify that.
Yeah. That's a very, very good point, but obviously there'd have to be coordination between both bylaws. If in fact you'd already received approvals for a dock, but you're making some changes to it, then you wouldn't have to go back into your riparian bylaw unless it was an illegal dock to start with. So that would be covered. But in many cases, there'd have to be a riparian assessment, and then you go into the lake development permits itself. So there'd be coordination between the two. That wouldn't always happen because there are going to be instances where there's going to be dock facilities like floating docks that are clear from the foreshore, or they wouldn't go across the riparian area at all, but many of them will. So it would have to be coordination between the two. So that's why we say in the permit area, we draw attention to that need, that it's complementary.
Okay, thanks.
So, first of all, in order to do these motions, Mr. Zacco, did you say that we should be doing the second one, the official community plan one first?
No,
Or not?
based on
What you heard, it's
the
okay?
land
All right.
corrected it, so it's okay.
All right, so there are several different motions here, and I'm just wondering if anybody would like to make those motions. Councillor Campol.
All right, I'll move that council gives first and second readings to the Foreshore and Lakeshore zoning amendment bylaw number 1294.02 2017 housekeeping improvements.
Thank you. Is there a seconder for that? Thank you. Councillor Youngberg. Anybody need to speak to that? All in favor? Thank you. And what about the second one? Is there somebody that would like to do the municipal ticket information system? Councillor Youngberg?
We don't the official.
Sorry.
Oh,
The
yeah.
official community plan. I'm on the next
Yeah.
page.
I was there. Council gives first and second readings to the official community plan amendment bylaw number 1230-20, 2017, Foreshore and Lake Development Permit Area FLDPA.
Thank you. Is there a seconder for that? Councillor King. Everybody okay with that? All in favor? Thank you very much. And third is the land use procedures.
And if it could be approved subject to $250.
Right, with the change.
Right.
Are you okay with that? So that's Councillor Rhodes and Councillor Campol with the change from 750 to 250 for the fee. Okay, all in favor? Thank you. And municipal ticket, Councillor Campol, you're moving that one, and a seconder, Councillor Rhodes. Any concerns about that? All in favor? Thank you. And the next motion that's needed is that we authorize staff to send referrals to a proposed new development permit for input prior to a public meeting. Is that correct? Okay. Thank you. Councillor Rhodes, Councillor Youngberg.
Yeah.
Thank you. All in favor? And the last one is that council schedules a public hearing for 4 p.m. on August the 21st.
I'd just like to add
Yes.
to that it should be tentatively, because if we get feedback from our referrals that some changes should be made, then I'll have to come back and request council's approval of us going back to second reading. So this only is premised on the fact that there would clearly...
So we put in tentative in there?
Yeah, so
Yes,
council
please.
schedules a
Yeah.
public hearing date tentatively.
Is that okay,
for
Mrs.
4 p.m.
Hilson?
August 21st.
Got it?
What was the date? August?
August the 21st. That's the only council meeting that we have in August.
Okay.
The first one is canceled. Okay, so all in favor of that? Thank you very much. Yes, Councillor Rhodes.
I
Would
made
that
the
be
motion.
held here?
I don't know who seconded.
Yes.
Yes, it was done. Was it not moved and seconded?
Who seconded the last one?
Did you move
Councillor
it,
Rhodes.
Councillor Rhodes, and all in favor? Okay. So, CJ,
It would be held here unless start getting a feedback that would be a lot of considerable interest that would merit holding it at the Sonora Center.
Yeah, so I would think that would be
Yeah, so we'll take
almost a
note of
given,
that.
yeah.
Okay.
okay. So we're finished with that one? Okay. Next is the administrative fees and charges bylaw. So I see that Mr. Davis is not here, but Mrs. Dynison is. Oh, you don't? So is somebody, are you doing that?
I can do that report.
Thank you very much.
So before council is bylaw 1331, administrative fees and charges. At the last regular meeting of council, June 19th, bylaw 1331 was read first, second, and third time, is now coming forward for adoption. Bylaw 1331 will replace repealed bylaw 1269 and will now contain the original content from the repealed bylaw 1269 and the new additions that were added at the June 5th council meeting. These additions include an application fee for special events with the provision that nonprofit groups be exempt, an extra washroom cleaning fee and with the provision that nonprofit groups would be exempt. Implications for community, identifying, providing services for the community, organizational, assist staff with processing special events applications and addressing the needs of the community, budget, enhanced revenues, significant dates as soon as possible. Options for council. Option 1 for council to adopt Bylaw 1331, administrative fees and charges. Option 2 for council direct staff to provide more information. Option 3 for council to remain status quo. And Gerald has recommended option number 1.
Councillor Campol.
Thank you. Seeing that the two changes that we asked for had been made, I move that council adopt Bylaw 1331, administrative fees and charges.
Thank you. Councillor King.
I'll second
All,
that.
yeah, seconding it. All in favor. Thank you very much. Next is the bylaw to amend water connection and regulation. Is that you, Mr. Zackel?
Yes. Okay, so we've got the council meeting on February 6, 2017. A request was made by council, or of council, to provide water and sewer service to 5221 Lakeshore Drive. This property owner has agreed to come into the town boundaries on the approval of the province. The property owner requires servicing prior to the boundary application and approval process required by the province. To enable servicing and guarantee that the property owner will come into the town boundaries, a servicing agreement will be completed and signed by the landowner and the town. The overview. A servicing agreement can't be completed until the amendment to the Water Connection and Regulation Bylaw 753/1989 is completed. The current wording of the bylaw prohibits the provision of water services outside town boundaries. The attached amendment enables the provision of water services outside the town boundaries based on a council-approved servicing agreement. The water servicing agreement is currently being completed and will come to council for approval once a bylaw amendment has been approved. This water servicing agreement will be used as a template for other properties on Lakeshore Drive wanting to come into town boundaries. At council's June 19th meeting, council gave first 3 readings to bylaw to amend Water Connection and Regulations Bylaw 753.03 2017. Implications for the community. Community will benefit from additional properties coming into the town boundaries. Organizationally, just the time to implement the agreements and the boundary expansion. Budget, minor legal fees for the servicing agreement. Significant dates. The landowner wants to receive servicing as soon as possible. Sustainability. The lake will be protected by the provision of sewer service to this property. Options before council. Council approves bylaw to amend Water Connection and Regulation Bylaw 753.03 2017 and amend Water Connection and Regulation Bylaw 753/1989 to enable the provision of water services outside town boundaries based on a council-approved water service agreement. Option 2, council denies the request to amend Water Connection Regulation Bylaw 753/1989. And Mr. Romanko's recommendation was administration recommends option number 1. Approval of this option will facilitate the directions provided by previous council motion 40-17.
Thank you. I just had a question. I know that the letter was sent to the regional district because they are required to approve this. That, I know it's been done, but it hasn't been dealt with at the regional district. That's more of a matter of courtesy.
Yep.
Am I correct? Okay. Thank you. So, Councillor Rhodes.
Thank you, Mayor McCorduff. Probably should have asked this question at the last meeting. I'm curious about the agreement and how binding the agreement is. And it's always hard to ask questions like this, but what if we do the hookup, based on the agreement, and something goes askew in the future? What are the consequences to the landowner if that happens?
Can't guarantee.
Yeah.
I wasn't privy to what Barry has got for legal opinion on providing sewer services out to a property where you're saying it's contingent upon coming into the town boundaries. Basically what they're doing is working on an agreement. So, and it's basically a servicing agreement. that we're providing these services with the understanding that they've approved to come into the town boundaries. So the approval process has happened. The only thing that could stop that process really is the province not agreeing to bring that property into town boundaries. The property owner has agreed. We've got it in writing. We've got it in a servicing agreement or a contract. That would be the only hiccup to that not happening.
Okay. Thank you.
And my thinking was, what if they want to back out once they get it? No? Is that part of it too? That's not a possibility?
No.
No. Okay, once you're in, you're in.
Well, you would have to, again, if there's no out clauses in the servicing agreement, then they'd be bound by that agreement, or that property would be bound by that agreement.
Okay. So, Councillor Rhodes.
So I'll make a motion based on the wording in option number 1 as recommended.
Thank you.
I'll second
Thank
that.
you. Councillor King. All in favor? Thank you. Next is the council report from Councillor Campol. Some money paid for meetings that he attended in Ottawa. Could someone please move that? Thank you. Councillor Rhodes.
I'll second.
Councillor King. All in favor? Thank you. Next.
Weird if I wasn't.
Yeah, well, you would have to just leave the room if that wasn't okay. Destination Osoyoos release from the lease, and is that Miss Van Vienen, please?
Thank you. The town entered into a lease agreement with Destination Osoyoos in November 2012 for the use of the building located at 8701 Main Street for a term of 3 years from January 1st, 2013 to December 31st, 2015, with a 3-year renewal clause. The renewal clause was acted on, and therefore DO has a lease until December 31st, 2018. Destination Osoyoos is requesting release from the current lease as of December 31st, 2017. This is 1 year ahead of the expiration of the term. There is no specific termination clause in the current lease for the tenant. However, seeing as 6 months' notice is being given by DO staff, staff do not see any reason for council to deny the request. DO has been made aware that they are required to restore the building to the condition it was prior to the lease, pursuant to the lease agreement, which at this time staff have noted specifically that the antenna that was installed for Cairo radio must be removed and repairs made to the roof and the walls. The Operational Services Department will be reviewing what will be required in this regard. It is recommended that no advertisement for the use of the building be done until council can thoroughly discuss what the needs of the community are in this regard. Implications to the community, none. Organizationally, none. Under budget, the lease fee of approximately $25,000 was deducted from the fee for service due from the landlord to the tenant under separate agreement. The loss of this lease fee can be discussed as part of the overall 2018 budget discussions. Significant dates: termination of the lease, December 31st, 2017. Options: the council agreed to release Destination Osoyoos from its lease for 8701 Main Street as of December 31st, 2017, on condition that the building is restored to the condition prior to the lease as required in the lease agreement. Or 2, the council agrees to release Destination Osoyoos from its lease for 8701 Main Street as of December 31st, 2017, or that council not agree to release Destination Osoyoos from its lease. Staff recommend option 1.
Thank you. And just for the record, Destination Osoyoos is not leaving town. They're moving up to the provincial building up the hill at the corner. So I just didn't want people to think that they were shutting down. Councillor Campol.
Thank you, Mayor McCorduff. So the only, I guess, I want to put forth option number 1, but if any changes were made to that building that might be of benefit, when we say we're bringing it back to the way it was found when they first leased it, if there was any type of renovation work or anything like that that we're aware of, I just want to have that option that we're not having something undone that might be to the benefit of the building.
Yeah, there was nothing except for that antenna. That was the only thing that was observed as different.
Okay, so I'll move option number 1.
Thank you. Councillor Rhodes is seconding that. All in favor? Thank you. Next is a report from Mr. Dinwiddie on a retaining wall along Magnolia Place. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor McCorduff. At both the June 5th and June 19th, 2017 council meetings, the Operational Services Department has provided Town Council with information on Mr. Moffat's concern over the retaining wall along Magnolia Place adjacent to his property at 4415 Oleander Drive. At Town Council's request, please find additional information on this situation. In an email from Terry Underwood of True Consulting sent to me on June 6th of 2017, Mr. Underwood indicates that the reconstruction of the intersection of Oleander Drive and Magnolia Place took place in 2001. This construction was completed by Flo
Workovchik.
Well, yeah, him. Excavating Limited in December of 2001. Mr. Underwood also states in his email that sections show the existing slope not being changed by the block installation. Mr. Moffat took out his building permit to construct his home on October 31st, 2007, and received his final inspection permit on June 2nd, 2009. This would seem to indicate that the intersection improvements at Oleander Drive and Magnolia Place were completed long before Mr. Moffat began construction of his house at 4415 Oleander Drive. As stated in my earlier report to Council on June 5th, earlier Town Councils have always supported existing bylaw number 1277, which holds that the responsibility for boulevard maintenance remains with the adjacent property owner. It would appear that Mr. Moffat would have known about the condition of the slope at Oleander Drive and Magnolia Place prior to the building of his home. Mr. Moffat has accepted responsibilities under bylaw number 1277 and completed partial slope and boulevard maintenance. Acceptance of his boulevard maintenance responsibility and implementation of some form of ground cover at an earlier date may have eliminated the sloughing issues that have occurred over the years of disputing responsibility. The following is a list of slope stabilization options and their estimated cost, which could be utilized to improve the boulevard on Magnolia Place adjacent to 4415 Oleander Drive. Option number 1, planting low-maintenance ground cover vegetation, approximately $2,500. Option number 2, installation of filter fabric and placement of larger landscaping rock, approximately $7,000. Option number 3, raise wall height by 1 block and install chain link fencing, approximately $21,500. The implications for the community. The community has supported Boulevard Maintenance Clause bylaw number 1277 for many years, and this clause is a standard operating principle for community bylaws. Many people in town go to great lengths to maintain slopes that appear to have greater problems than exist in this situation. If service levels were changed to place the responsibility for boulevard maintenance onto the Operational Services Department, then additional resources will be required. Budget-wise, possible future increases to and these are substantial increases, to the Operational Services Department's parks budget to accommodate changes in service levels. Significant dates. This matter has been addressed by 2 previous councils, therefore a final decision needs to be made and this matter closed. Under sustainability, future Operational Services Department budgets would have to be adjusted to sustain this change in service levels. The options before Town Council today are as follows. Option number 1, Town Council supports past council decisions that the responsibility for boulevard maintenance remain with the adjacent property owner and denies Mr. Moffat's request for town resources to be invested into slope management at his property. Option number 2 is that town directs the Operational Services Department to assist Mr. Moffat in stabilizing the slope of his property at 4415 Oleander Drive by planting appropriate vegetation for approximately $2,500. Option number 3, Town Council directs Operational Services to assist Mr. Moffat in stabilizing the slope of his property by installing larger landscaping rock for approximately $7,000. Option number 4, Town Council directs Operational Services Department to raise wall height by 1 block and install chain link fence for approximately $21,500. Option number 5 is that Town Council directs the administration to negotiate a compromise with Mr. Moffat to contribute a portion of the chosen slope stabilization method costs. Option number 6 is that Town Council requests additional information prior to making a decision. The recommendation from administration is Council adopt option number 1.
Thank you very much for going through all of the options that we have here. Councillor Campol.
Thank you, Madam Recordoff. Just to be clear, anything outside of option number 1 would require a change in the bylaw, correct?
It's a change in how we do business, absolutely.
It's a change in the service levels.
Okay.
Because right now, we do not do any improvements to people's boulevards. The boulevards are the responsibility of the property
Adjacent
owners.
So it would require an amendment to a bylaw and a change in services. So I've heard nothing compelling to suggest that the town is in any way responsible for the situation. And based on the timing and the research that was done, which we've heard in the previous meeting, which hasn't changed today, I think we were curious of what some of the cost of remedy might be. But I'm still taking the same position I took several weeks back, and I'd like to move option number 1.
Thank you. Councillor King?
I'll second that.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak to this? Councillor Youngberg.
What happens today when someone doesn't maintain their boulevard?
Well, if they don't maintain it to the point where it becomes unsightly property, then there goes to bylaws, and they investigate. They could be issued an unsightly premises fine, and then if they still don't maintain their boulevard, then we hire somebody to go clean it up, and they have to pay the fine.
And it's put on their taxes?
Yeah.
From my point of view, I think when this first came to council a couple of months ago, I was concerned about when Mr. Moffat built his home and what did he know at the time that he built the home. I'm quite convinced now through the several reports that in fact he did understand that the wall below had been changed before he ever took out a building permit, and that perhaps, pardon me, yes, the slope, and perhaps if there had been some plantings done at that time, this problem would not have existed today. So I certainly do appreciate the fact that you've looked into all of this. So anyone else? So we have a motion on the floor to go with option number 1, that we support the council supports past council decisions, responsibility for boulevard maintenance remaining with the adjacent property owner, and denies Mr. Moffat's request for town resources. Moved and seconded. All in favor? Thank you. That's carried. Next is, I assume this is not Mr. Davis. This would be your turn to shine, Mrs. Dynison. Okay. Play school rental space in the Sonora.
Thank you, Mayor McCordoff. So background, we had a request from the owner of Mrs. D's Play School asking about potential rental space at the Sonora Community Center. The Play School is currently located at the elementary school, and they have to relocate. Overview. Mrs. D's Play School is currently located at Osoyoos Elementary. Unfortunately, it will have to relocate in September due to new class size regulations. The preschool is licensed through Interior Health and has to be inspected in order to operate. This play school will be an asset for parents and children entering school, especially its close proximity to the elementary school. The preschool can utilize our craft room on the 2nd floor. It is large enough to accommodate the children she would have for next September. The current registration is 16 students, 8 in the morning class and 8 in the afternoon class. Registration would be limited to the licensing requirements of 3.7 square meters per child. We will need to work out a formal agreement and make sure all licensing issues are addressed. Any changes or upgrades would be the responsibility of the preschool. The preschool would operate Monday through Friday and will have the times of 8:45 a.m. to 11:45 a.m. and 11:45 a.m. to 2:15 p.m. if morning and afternoon classes are required. The Sonora Community Center will still run all of our programs out of the craft room as they would not interfere with the schedule. Most of the programs are after school, evenings, and into the weekend. One obstacle to address would be the storage of our craft supplies, but we do have some options. We have ample storage areas on the 2nd floor, and we can make that work. As stated by Mrs. Dos Santos, the advantages of having the play school so close to the elementary school provides ample opportunity for children to take part in activities at the elementary school and offers them an easier transition into kindergarten. Having this play school set up locally would be beneficial to parents, as some of them are driving to Oliver before the play school was set up in Osoyoos. Implications: community, addressing a need for a preschool environment where the needs of parents and their children are met. Organizational, staff would be responsible for developing an agreement and also for regular maintenance as part of the building. Budget: the play school would pay rental fees for the use of the Sonora Community Center. The play school paid $500 a month at the school and is willing to pay the same fee for the use of the Sonora Center. significant dates. The current play school will not be allowed to operate in the elementary school in September, so a decision needs to be made as soon as possible. And sustainability is not applicable. Options, number 1, for council to approve the use of the Sonora Community Center for a play school and direct staff to develop a formal agreement subject to a rental fee of $500 a month. 2, for council not to approve the use of the Sonora Community Center to operate a play school. And 3, for council to direct staff to bring back more information. And Mr. Davis's recommendation is option 1.
Thank you very much. Councillor Youngberg?
Yes, thanks, Mayor McCordoff. Mrs. Dennison, is $500 in agreement with the rest of the occupants of Sonora Center? For an example, what do the Boys and Girls Club pay?
The Boys and Girls Club pay, as far as I know, pay less than that for one of the facilities that they use, but they have 2 rooms that they use.
Oh, they do?
Lease out, yeah.
Okay, just wondering about the $500 per month, if it was in line with what everybody else pays.
It is slightly higher than the rent that was paid by the Osoyoos Autistic Behavioral Center when they were in there.
But she does agree to pay, so that's really good.
Yeah.
I'd like to make the motion that council approve the use of the Sonora Community Center for a play school and direct staff to develop a formal agreement subject to a rental fee of $500 a month.
Thank you. Councillor Rhodes, you're seconding that? And Mr. Zackel, did you want to? No, you're okay?
I'm okay.
Good, thank you. Did anyone like to? Yeah, did you? Go ahead.
Not to continue on with that $500 a month thing, I'm curious, and perhaps you don't even know, I am supportive of this motion, but I'm worried about the $500 cost. Does it at least cover any additional costs that we would incur?
There wouldn't be any significant additional costs.
So we wouldn't have any increase in insurance costs or any of those
They would,
tangible?
as far as I understand it, they would have their own insurance that they would include the town as an additional insured.
Would that be outlined in the agreement?
I'm assuming it would be, yeah.
I would think the formal agreement might have to have that.
So I think a standard agreement under tenancy is $3 million in liability at minimum, up to 5, and they would be naming the town of Osoyoos and the Sonora Center on the policy. I would hope that that's standard language on any tenancy agreement.
I'd also like to add, too, that right now that room is only used for 2 hours a week, maybe,
Okay.
and only maybe 20 weeks out of the year. So it's an additional income that we would be.
Well, I think you can understand the reason for my question.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I'd hate to make $6,000 a year and have it cost us $8,000. That's the reason why I asked that. So.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it says the formal agreement here, so obviously those kinds of things would be worked out when you have a formal agreement.
I would guess so, yeah.
Councillor Campol?
Thank you. Speaking in support of the motion, and if you're reading social media and a Soyuz loop, there's clearly a need
Absolutely.
for this, and the fact that it doesn't really cause any major interruption or anything like that. I think it's a great situation. So I'm happy that we're able to do it.
Okay, so it's been moved and seconded. Has it, Mrs. Hilson? If we got moved, okay. So all in favor of the motion? Thank you very much.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Okay.
Next is the a motion. No, the general net payroll and Sun Bowl Arena financial accounts. To report on accounts payable, general cash requirements up to July 4th, 2017, $913,570.85. Sun Bowl cash requirements of $12,957.60, and both of those would be approved by consensus. And net payroll accounts is $121,617.92, and that would be received for information. Next are the Waterfront Steering Committee minutes. And I know, Councillor Rhodes, you were there. Is there anything you wanted to add to this?
I think the report is available to the public, and it was not, it wasn't anything earth-shattering in there. I would like to mention that we did consult with Mike Stiles and some of the challenges that that may come up in the future, and I think we came, we moved forward an awful lot with access for individuals that may be in wheelchairs and other impairments and that kind of thing. We came up with a couple of good solutions. None of it has been put into place right now, but certainly we have an awful lot of options. And I feel that they're good, solid ones, and I can't thank Mike enough for coming to the meeting and participating in it, because so often there are challenges that we miss, and he certainly was able to point out an awful lot of those. The committee is moving forward. We haven't run across any major barriers, and I think the essence of the meeting is quite well explained in there. One other thing I would like to mention, towards the end of that report, I believe there was a mention about a Canada 150 tree, and it seemed to be quite well accepted by council, and we did have an on-site visit with Len Cunningham and Barry Romanko and myself, and I think we've chosen a spot, and I'd like everybody, and I mentioned this only because we were confronted when we were down there, we are not taking any trees down. We are, in fact, adding a tree to the site down there, and I think that's important to mention that. And the purpose of the tree is to, add to that site down there. And during the Christmas season, it'll be something that's able to be decorated and enjoyed by everybody that's down there. And there will be great sight lines from driving down the hill towards the east on Main Street as well.
Perfect. I think it's a great idea. Also, Mr. Romanko said to me that there would be at least one tree planted, so it's a possibility that we may even have more than that.
I think what the plan is right now, rather, there was some talk about taking a couple of non-conforming trees out of that area and immediately replacing them with something that's more acceptable. The one tree that we're talking about with the Canada 150, it was decided bigger rather than more trees.
Okay, perfect. So that will be done in, I believe, in October.
Yes.
Is the plan for that. Thank you very much for that. We also have some Community Services Advisory Committee meeting minutes there, and I don't think anybody who's at the table here was at that meeting, so those minutes are certainly available for everybody to have a look at.
I could just make a comment, since the public can't read it. That steering committee did support the idea of minor baseball possibly using the dog park. It's in their minutes.
Okay. Yeah, I see that he made a delegation to there. So this is available. Councillor King, these minutes are available online for anybody who wanted to have a look. So we need to have a motion that both of these reports are accepted. Thank you. Councillor Campol, Councillor Rhodes, all in favor. Thank you. And we have a CAO report. Do you have anything that Mr. Romanko is on holiday this week? So we'll check with Mr. Zackel.
So yes, Mr. Romanko is on a well-deserved break. Right now, speaking from the finance perspective, is our last day of tax collection, and the ladies are working very hard and diligently out there right now, receiving property tax payments. As of, I believe it was 2 o'clock, we were about 80% of the taxes collected, where we usually have an average of about 92% collected. So there is a number of property owners that haven't paid yet, or they are paying online, and we haven't seen those payments come across, which will happen tonight. So there is a number of property owners that still have to get in before the 4:30 deadline to get paid. We have sent off every moment that we had a break. We're trying to get a hold of people that haven't paid to try to give them the heads up, but that's more of a courtesy than anything else. And that's what I'd like to report.
Jim, is it safe to say that there's every year the percentage changes, that there's more people doing it online, and maybe that skews the numbers a bit?
That is correct. That is correct. So,
Let's hope.
unfortunately, there's still the that 20% or 30%, or basically close to 30%, that are waiting till the last day to process. You know, for what the interest rates are, if they'd be processing it, you know, a couple days earlier, it would make staff's job a little bit easier. But that's not how it works.
I know.
This is property taxes, and it's near and dear to a lot of people. So the most important thing is to not incur that 10% penalty. Get your payment in. We'll process the payments as long as they are dated July 4th. The people will not pay a penalty on their outstanding taxes.
Well, I just have to say that the girls in the office out front have done a phenomenal job the last month. Everybody sort of jumps in when we have lineups out the front, and they're very clear, they're efficient, they are polite, and they've done a great job. So we're lucky.
Yep.
Okay,
And
so
would be it.
yes.
Move to receive CEO report?
Thank you. Was that the CEO report? No, it wasn't.
Not really?
Okay.
Scratch that.
More verbal.
Okay, so we'll go on to councillor reports, and Councillor Campol, you're first.
Thank you, Mayor McCordoff. I've never been so happy to attend a graduation as I was this one, mainly because my kids haven't graduated yet. But you know, this was the graduation that we didn't think we were going to see. So it was just a great event, from the students speaking to the staff speaking. Yeah, it was just a very moving graduation ceremony. So I was happy to attend that and help Mayor and Council hand out bursaries. The other thing I wanted to say, and I'm just going to read it because I posted it on social media, but I'd like to read it. And it's just a big heartfelt thank you to so many that were part of making this weekend as amazing as it was in our town. From the fundraising for the fireworks, to the fireworks, the parade, the town staff and public works, the RCMP, Bylaw, fire department, paramedics, the many volunteers, the Festival Society, Three Amigos, our mayor, and all the businesses that really stepped up and helped make this happen. And that list goes on. But what took place this weekend should be and will be marveled by big cities across the country, because this little town maybe I shouldn't read it verbatim, because this little town did an incredible job this weekend, and we should be very proud.
Thank you. That was very nicely said. Councillor King.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I also attended the graduation, and it was great to see all the happy faces receiving their diplomas, and with Strand and Ramomeli, it was just fantastic. And ditto to what Mike said about the committees and all the hard work they did for Canada Day. It had to be the biggest and best ever. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Youngberg.
Thanks, Mayor McCordoff. Yes, just a third little ditto about the graduation ceremony. Everybody involved in creating that ceremony just did a wonderful job. And it's one thing I thought about a lot when I was sitting there is how great a small graduating class is for the students. They have such individual appreciation of each other. They come together as a group and created just a wonderful feeling for the evening. They all worked together to create that ceremony as well. So I thought it was wonderful, and good luck to all of them. As we said that evening, the fireworks were unbelievable. I did watch the Ottawa fireworks, and you know, I think that we come a very, very close second. They were really well done. Frank has just, he's perfected his job of being a pyromaniac, and I just tease him all the time. I call him a pyromaniac because he does such a great job. And of course, a lot of people attended the parade, which I saw, and I've been away for a while, so some of my committees haven't seen me. But I will attend to that, and that's all I have to report today.
Thank you. Councillor Rhodes.
Thank you, Member Cordoff. Well, one of the nice things about being last on the list is you can always use that word ditto what everybody said. The Canada Day celebration from the pancake breakfast early in the morning put on by the Rotary until the close of, well, I'm going to say the fireworks, but we may as well fold in the hour and a half to 2 hour drive it took everybody to get home after the fireworks. And everything that happened in between there was just absolutely stunning. The comments that you get from people are just so positive and so full of energy, so yeah, just a great day, and everybody involved in it just deserves a big thank you. And I don't know if I'm the person to do that, but thank you for everything that everybody did. Our mayor deserves a mention. I know she was up very early in the morning and went to bed very late that night and was at almost every event and even stuck around afterwards to help clean up some of the garbage that was left behind by people. And so a big shout out and a thank you to our mayor. And I have to clarify my ditto a little bit. I was not able to attend the graduation. Out of the last 12, 13, 14 years, that's only the second one that I've missed. And I only mention that because riding around on Sunday morning, getting ready for the parade and judging, I was challenged by an individual or a community about not showing up. I didn't explain it. I don't feel that I owe anybody an explanation, but you just can't make it to everything. Right. And I apologize for not being there, but I don't feel any guilt. In my world, my family comes first, and it kind of had to take precedent over it this time. But anyway, all of the things that I heard about the graduation, I just feel so good about it. And just to see some of those young people actually graduating in our community is such a wonderful thing. And so I'll stop there, and that'll be it, I guess, for council reports.
Thank you. And speaking of grad, that was 100% of the class graduated. So that was pretty cool. They did an amazing job. Everybody was happy because we weren't sure last year at grad that this would ever happen. So I just want to thank in particular Principal Mike Safik and Vice Principal Lyle Chapman, both of whom are leaving. Mike is retiring, and Lyle is going back up to Vernon, closer to where his family is. They pulled things together very, very quickly and got that new timetable going, and from all that we've heard, people are very happy with it, not only parents, but staff and kids. So we're just so glad that there was that was able to go through this year. Market on Main, I just wanted to give a shout out to them. They have been open on Saturdays. This week it was Sunday because the Councillor King was out mixing batter the day before at 7 in the morning, so we couldn't have the farmer's market for the pancake breakfast. Rotary does a terrific job at that. And they are not only Market on Main, not only Saturday mornings now, but they're also Wednesdays. So Wednesday for the months of July and August from, I think it's 5:30 to 8:30. So it's twice a week now you can come to Market on Main. I want to welcome Akam Takar, who is our new ambassador for Osoyoos. We only have, she was the only candidate this year. She's done a terrific job so far, and she will continue to represent Osoyoos and be an ambassador for the next year. I was at a meeting the other day with BC Utilities Commission and Fortis. It was held at Watermark, and Fortis was looking at rate design structure, which is kind of a complicated way of looking at of how they're going to look at how they form or how they come up with costs for things. So there's costs of service analysis, and 55% of power in this area is generated locally and 45% contracted from other power users like BC Hydro. I thought that was interesting. Anyway, it was a bit it's a bit technical for me, but I did listen to it all. And they've been up in Kelowna, in Osoyoos, and in Castlegar, and they are going to collate all the information that they've heard. Many of the people in Osoyoos were concerned about the high rates, time of day, the two-tiered system, and several people from up on Anarchist were concerned because they don't have the option of having gas. So all of those things will be collated, and they are coming back to Watermark on July the 26th again. So anybody who would be interested could go. And I just want to thank Mr. Zackel for getting the information that the town has paid over the last couple of years. And one of the things that they asked me was, did that include lighting? And I said, my assumption is that that was all of the town's power. Yeah, good, thank you. And I just want to say something about Cherry Fiesta, because I've been a member of this group for 25 years and chaired Cherry Fiesta for many years as well. They're a phenomenal group. They work really hard for several months, and Lynn Motkowski, who's the chair right now, just does an amazing job. And we're still not finished yet, because we've got lots of things left to do and lots of tidy up things to do, and we start getting ready for next year. So thanks to everybody that helps put on this event, but in particular the Osoyoos Festival Society, because they do an amazing job. And I think that's all I've got for today. So thank you, everybody, and have a good evening, and stay cool.
Motion to adjourn.
Thank you. That would be King Campol. Motion to adjourn. All in favor? Oh,